Tonight, a warning from MI5 about Chinese espionage as the security minister announces a package of measures to counter the threats.
Let me speak plainly. This activity involves a covert and calculated attempt by a foreign power to interfere with our sovereign affairs in favour of its own interests. And this government will not tolerate it.
Two women are accused of masquerading as recruitment headhunters to target Parliament and the government. Tonight, the Chinese embassy has dismissed the allegations as pure fabrication and malicious slander. Also ahead in the next hour, Nigel Farage tells us that the Home Secretary's new asylum policy is designed to stave off the threat from his party. As new figures show that the so-called immigration borrowers wave was even bigger than previously thought. Kemi Badenoch talks tough on welfare spending, but tells Sky News she won't commit yet to keeping the pension triple lock. And around the world in 502 days, as the Prime Minister heads off on another foreign trip, we look at the risks and rewards of playing the global statesman. Well, all that and more with our panel tonight, who haven't travelled that far. Jim Murphy and Baroness Jenny Jones will be with us for the next hour. It's Tuesday, I'm Darren McCaffrey, live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. A very good evening and welcome to the programme. We'll be getting onto all of those stories in just the next couple of minutes, but we want to start with a developing story tonight, and that is live pictures from the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., where members are beginning to vote on a bill that would compel the Trump administration to release case files in regards to Jeffrey Epstein. The measure would still need to be passed by the Senate and indeed signed, of course, by President Trump. Over the weekend, Donald Trump said that Republicans should vote for the release as there is nothing to hide. But as I say, that vote is due to get underway at any minute. We are expecting a result, I think, within the next hour. When we have that, of course, we will bring it live here on Sky News. The expectation, of course, is that it will pass the House of Representatives. But as I say, we will bring you that result here on Sky News probably within the next hour or so. But let's start with our main story tonight, and that is that MI5 have warned that figures linked to the Chinese intelligence service are trying to recruit people inside UK's Parliament. The warning from the security service was issued to MPs, peers and parliamentary staff, and it concerns two women who operate online as headhunters. Now, interestingly, since this story came out, I decided to check my LinkedIn today, and it turns out that I was also contacted by one of them, claiming to be Shirley Shen. This was last year, and this is what she said in a DM message to me. She said, "Hi, my name is Shirley, a global headhunter. A very famous research centre is looking for virtual global consultant. Luckily, to see your LinkedIn, we found you are so excellent candidates. We really look forward to cooperate with you. If you have interest, please contact me." As you can see, that was sent in May of last year. Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, I didn't even read that message and I certainly did not respond. But what is clear is that this is pretty widespread, because we heard from the Speaker of the House of Commons today claiming that the messaging was widespread and also targeted. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the Chinese embassy this afternoon has branded the accusations as pure fabrication and accused the UK of a self-staged charade. Well, our political correspondent, Maury Aurora, has tonight's first report.
Behind a year of niceties between Westminster and Beijing, serious security concerns from the heart of the Chinese state. Not for the first time this year, we're talking about allegations of spying within Westminster backed by the Chinese government. This time, a stark warning direct from MI5. In a letter to parliamentary staff, Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle warns, "The Chinese Ministry of State Security is actively reaching out to individuals in our community. Their aim is to collect information and lay the groundwork for long-term relationships." The alert explicitly accuses two people, Amanda Chiu and Shirley Shen, of posing as headhunters on LinkedIn to reach out to people in Parliament. Both have been approached for comment.
Done, Jarvis.
The government warns the threat extends beyond parliamentarians.
Let me speak plainly. This activity involves a covert and calculated attempt by a foreign power to interfere with our sovereign affairs in favour of its own interests. And this government will not tolerate it.
The government has reacted with fresh measures: new funding for security programmes, briefings for political parties and election candidates, and working with recruitment sites like LinkedIn to clamp down on spying. But the opposition says the government should be tougher.
It can impose sanctions, it can cancel propaganda visits to China, and it can put the Chinese Communist Party in the enhanced tier. When they do any of these, we will be here and ready to help.
A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy dismissed the allegations as pure fabrication and malicious slander, adding, "We urge the UK side to immediately stop this self-staged charade of false accusations and self-aggrandisement, and stop going further down the wrong path of undermining China-UK relations." These fresh allegations come weeks after the collapse of the case into two men accused of spying for China around Westminster, accusations both men continue to deny. And repeatedly delayed plans for a Chinese super embassy in central London have become a flashpoint in the discussion around UK-China relations. With a decision due next month, China has warned of consequences if a decision continues to be pushed back. Experts warn this is not just a Westminster problem.
We know from previous cases that tens of thousands of people are being approached right across the UK economy. So it's not even especially Parliament, it's actually more likely to be businesses, and businesses are very much more exposed, more susceptible.
The government is walking a tightrope between wanting to look tough on China and keeping trade doors open with an economic superpower. But with repeated allegations like this, MPs are mounting pressure on the government to take bigger steps, as far as labelling China a national security threat. With future diplomatic visits to Beijing not off the table, allegations of spying only serve to hinder the relationship between the two nations. Mari Aurora, Sky News.
Well, let's bring in the former Conservative leader and Cabinet Minister, Sir Iain Duncan Smith, who has been sanctioned by China in the past. Iain, very good evening to you. Were you surprised by today's announcement?
Well, not really, because this has been going on for some time. I mean, a lot of us, the organisation I set up, the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, has got 53 countries in it now. We've been warning about this. This is what they do everywhere they go, the Chinese Communist Party. They have this low-level attempt to get as much information as possible. They gather it in the hope of getting something very important, and they've already been accused of spying in Parliament. That case collapsed because the government could not say that China was a continuing threat to national security. And that's ridiculous, because 2 weeks after the collapse of that case, what happens? They're back here today telling us that China has been threatening because of its spying attempts, again, through another unit, but they're still spying on us, and that makes it a mockery of their position.
Well, of course, the Chinese have denied this, and they repeatedly do deny that they are spying in the UK. I think they brand these things as a fabrication. What I'm intrigued by is in many regards how, A, widespread this is, but also that it doesn't seem, at least on the surface, terribly sophisticated.
Well, the low-level stuff is not particularly sophisticated because they're there to gather amounts of information about how Parliament works, what they're doing, so they can target more exactly later on. That was the whole point of the original spying trial. They're not after supersonic involvements where they can really get to grips with key facts and technology. They already do that. They steal the IPs, they take over companies, they steal all of that. And today what was interesting was that the minister said they posed a threat now on a whole variety of areas. They have a threat to people who have fled China. They're being threatened with bounties on their head. It's a threat to our industry, our manufacturing industry, a threat to our security of that. We've got a threat to MPs like myself who have been sanctioned. A whole row of threats he announced. And then when I asked him, well, does China pose a continuing threat to British national security? And he wouldn't answer the question, because what they won't do is say that China is an overall threat to our national interests, because they're so desperate to get some strange trade arrangement with the Chinese government. It's pathetic, really.
Yeah, I mean, well, it may well be pathetic, but that was also the position under previous Conservative governments as well. The government may well make the case that it is trying to strike a balance. At the end of the day, you know, China is the second most populous nation on the planet and the second wealthiest economy.
Well, for what it was worth, the last government, after pressure from people like myself, was about to put China in the upper tier of the foreign influence registration scheme. This government should have done the same. The government published a China audit that they published. They haven't published it. They now got it under lock and key. We don't know what unhelpful stuff was going to come out of that was going to hurt the government. The fact is, you don't do a trade-off between trade and national security. National security is supreme. It's the one reason you elect governments.
Well, we haven't got national security, Iain. If we're not very wealthy, we don't. And also, let's be honest about this, all countries spy on each other, don't they?
Oh, this is a completely ridiculous argument. Honestly, we're not very wealthy, so we can't protect our country. We're wealthy enough to do that, let me tell you. And the reality here is that China poses a very significant threat to us and to many of our European friends and neighbours, and also to the United States. Most of them recognise it. The UK government has got very weak on this. It is a complete weak attempt on their part to curry favour with the Chinese government. It's time they owned up to the fact China poses a distinct and continuing threat to the United Kingdom's national security. So there is no question. Anybody that knows anything about it knows that to be the case.
So you're saying essentially we should just kind of draw up the drawbridge, if you like, that ministers shouldn't go to China anymore? I mean, at what level do you want us to detach?
This idea that you suddenly have this false comparison between drawing up the drawbridge or calling them a threat and then having much sharper tools to make sure that we stop those threats happening is a critical element. Drawing up the drawbridge isn't the case because China and the UK will continue to engage one way or the other. And the reality to us is right now we've been importing solar arrays from China which we know had slave labour involved in them in Xinjiang, the mining and the use of polysilicon. We've had to push the government to eventually get an amendment in to stop that happening. The government is very weak over their relationship with China. Lots of other countries are much tougher with them, and China then respects that sense of toughness because then they have to deal with it. With us, it looks like we're a complete pushover. The government is utterly failing even to call them a threat. They are a threat. They know that. Everybody else knows it. The government refuses to admit it, and that's a weakness. And we got
do you think ministers, do you think the Prime Minister shouldn't visit China anymore?
No, I think what he should be saying to them categorically be any more of that, the way in which you would spy on us, we're not going to cooperate with you. That is a moment of strength for the government. They should be saying that categorically to China. China respects strength, for goodness sake. What they think is a joke is the way that we are behaving about, oh my God, we won't get trade with China. China threatens everybody the whole time. What you have to do is stand up to them and they will accept that they're not going to get you as a pushover.
Well, isn't the harsh reality here, Duncan Smith, I know that we frankly do need China more than they need us? That's the hard political reality in 2025.
No, it's not at all. That's utter rubbish.
Really? How is that utter rubbish?
We don't. Yeah, we don't need China.
That we need...
There is plenty. No, there isn't. Let me finish. You asked me a question. We don't need China by abandoning everything else that we believe in, and for considering that we don't criticize China when they make mistakes or they get it wrong. That is a ludicrous position for a government to take. There is no peculiar choice we have to make between kowtowing to China or standing up to them. The fact is, we have to set out where we are, what we believe, and that as a free nation, we are not going to put up with this any longer. China wants things from us. They want to have a super embassy in the middle of London, which is really hopeless. It'll just get an extra 200 spies involved in it. Nobody else believes they should have it. None of the Europeans do, and the Americans don't, and most of the Parliament doesn't believe that. But they'll probably get that granted by a weak Labour government. And I think it's the important feature, which is know who you are, don't put up with nonsense from other countries, and they will respect you for it. But kowtowing to China only makes us look wet and pathetic.
OK, Duncan Smith, live for us there in Parliament. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
All the best.
Well, let's get more on this with our panel for this evening, the former leader of Scottish Labour, Jim Murphy, and the Green Party peer, Baroness Jenny Jones. Very good evening to you both.
Good evening.
How are you? Hello. Jim, what's your sense? Iain Duncan Smith saying that governments kowtowing should stand up to China.
Look, the relationship with China is complicated and we shouldn't pretend it isn't. It's an enormous economic opportunity for the UK, so we have to engage. There's real pools of capital and investment that can come to the UK. But at the same time, we have to tell them the truth, which is that we don't tolerate their interference in our democracy. But it also opens questions for all of us. All of us in this country have to come to terms with, to what degree are we willing to allow Chinese technology into our lives? Because I see these new cars on our streets, these new electric vehicles, they're Chinese manufactured. I see some...
But they're cheaper.
They're cheap,
and they work pretty well.
They are cheap. They are cheaper. They work well. They don't drive many jobs in the UK. But what they do is give the Chinese government, if they wish, in the future, an ability to log in, listen in, and act based upon anything that's going on in those cars. So, for example, the last couple of days, we've seen the Ministry of Defence say, don't carry out conversations in these vehicles for fear of Chinese listening devices in them.
Which
so
seems
it's a
quite
question
extraordinary.
it's a question for all of us.
OK. Jenny, what's your view on all of this?
Well, we have to ask ourselves why these cars are so cheap and why so many products from China are so cheap. And that's because they're using slave labour. And that's something that we should be concerned about. We do buy an awful lot from China. It is quite often made by people like Uyghurs and so on who have absolutely no choice in the work.
Just
and
on
we should
the...
be thinking about... making our own.
Just on the spying stuff, though,
Yes.
on the wider picture,
Yeah.
are we getting the balance wrong?
I think on the whole, we have to stand up to China. We have to say this isn't acceptable. But at the same time, it's very difficult to cut off all diplomatic relations with any country, regardless. And so I'm delighted that there are people who feel that they can talk to China, but it is a very difficult conversation.
But at the moment, do you think that balance is right? Do you think, we need to be tougher, or do you think actually Labour have got a pretty good? I think it's kind of challenge, cooperates is kind of the government's argument on all this.
Well, I'm not...
And competes.
Thank you for that. Well, I agree with the compete, but I don't see them challenging very much, and I think that's where they fail. China's not very good at the rule of law. It actually abuses all sorts of systems, international systems, and that's something we really ought to stand up about and be clear that it's unacceptable. I don't see that coming out of this government.
Jim, I put it to IDS, and he obviously massively disagreed, this idea that, right, we need China more than they need us. I mean, the cold, hard reality in 2025 is they are a superpower. We are not. We're a middle-ranking power.
Look, it's a brave argument to say that a country of 1 billion people needs a country of 70 million people more than we need them. But it's an argument that Iain makes. I agree with some of the things that he had said. The truth for the UK, I think, in the future is how do we level the playing field in our engagement with China? And it's through European allies in particular, because the European Union of 500 million people. Regrettably, we're no longer in the European Union, but that's the new reality.
Well, we can still cooperate on lots of
so therefore
different levels. We do that in
cooperating.
NATO
Of course,
and elsewhere.
cooperating. NATO's not the right way to do it.
No, I'm not suggesting that, but
through European structures, that coordination with France, Germany, ourselves, multiplies our influence, multiplies our power, and I think that cooperation is the way to do it.
Just finally on this for both of you, Jenny, I'll start with you. Iain Duncan Smith brought it up at the end there about this Chinese embassy. Should it go ahead?
Well, I think not. I think, we should be thinking much more about how we use our city, and having a giant Chinese embassy, and it probably isn't the best way forward. No.
OK, no from you, Jim?
Personally, no, but we should realise that if the government says no, there will be consequences. Now, we shouldn't be scared of those consequences.
Well, should we not?
But we should realise that, look, in your engagement with China, I've been many times as a government minister over the years. It's a complicated set of politics that requires patience in diplomatic engagement and then telling the hard truth when necessary. But realise that for every action, there's a disproportionate overreaction, and we should just be prepared for that happening.
OK, for the moment, Jenny, Jim, thank you very much indeed. We're just going to take you back, actually, to the House of Representatives. The other story that we're following this evening. As you can see, that vote is now underway into the release of those Jeffrey Epstein files. Now, this is a vote in the House of Representatives. If it passes, and the expectation is that it will then move on to the US Senate before landing on Donald Trump's desk. He has done somewhat of an about-turn, it must be said, in the last week or so, suggesting that he has no problem with the release of those files. But as I say, we are expecting that result some point in the next hour, probably before the end of the programme, actually, and we will bring it to you here on Sky News as we get it. OK, you're watching the Politics Hub. Up next, though, we'll be focusing on politics here in the UK as new figures show that the number of people who came to Britain in the so-called Boris wave was higher than previously thought. We'll talk about that after the break.
She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget, I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down the track.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
Goodness knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. Now, the Home Secretary has unveiled plans for hardline asylum policies yesterday. She attempts, of course, to tackle illegal immigration. But new figures released today show the peak for total net migration by legal and irregular routes was higher than previously thought. These figures from the Office for National Statistics, which is frankly not having a good time at the moment, says that it now believes 257,000 Britons left the UK last year, compared with a previous estimate of 77,000, so essentially increased threefold. The number of British nationals who returned to the UK has also been revised. It now stands at 143,000, compared to the previous estimate of 60,000. Meanwhile, net migration, that's the difference between the number of people entering compared to those leaving the country, was 944,000 in the year ending to March 2023, the so-called Boris wave. That's higher than the previous estimated peak of 906,000. Essentially, as you can see, that figure almost 1 million people. Well, there's been ongoing reaction to the Home Secretary's plans on asylum. Earlier, Sky's Tamara Cohen asked the Reform leader Nigel Farage if he would be voting for the proposals, and here's what he had to say.
Oh, the rhetoric of it. I mean, she sounded like she was auditioning to become a Reform MP, you know. I mean, of course we liked all of that. I do believe it was highly performative. I do believe it was done to sort of stave off what they see as the threat of the Reform vote, particularly in the Red Wall. But I just don't believe it's doable. I'm not sure it's going to pass the backbenchers, but when it comes to how we're going to...
But why not vote for it anyway?
Well, hang on. If I thought it was going to work, I would vote for it. I do not believe, all the while the Human Rights Act is still in place with ECHR, etc. I don't believe any of this can really work, and on that basis, no.
The Home Secretary heard your invitation to defect to Reform, and she told you, quotes, to sod off. She's also said that your party's policy of abolishing indefinite leave to remain, even for people who are here, millions of people who are already here, she said is immoral and shameful. What do you think about that?
No, I think abolishing indefinite leave to remain is the right way for us to go in the future. As ever with these things, you know, it's easy to say you won't do something in the future, but let's go back for those that are here under indefinite leave to remain, and let's find out, you know, are they actually a benefit to the country? And then we can have a conversation, all right? What we can't do is to go on adding massively to the benefits bill against the interests of British-born people from those from overseas. And you know, it's all very well and her. I mean, she herself is now saying that if you come as a migrant, you might have to wait 20 years to get some categorisation. So she went a long way towards our position.
Tamara Cohen speaking to Nigel Farage a little earlier. As you can see, by the way, on the side of your screen, we are looking at those pictures from the House of Representatives as that vote is underway on Jeffrey Epstein and those files. We are expecting that to finish in the next couple of minutes or so. We will be live in DC for that. But let's bring in our panel on immigration, Jim Murphy and Jenny Jones. Jenny, you were signed throughout everything Nigel Farage had to say there.
Do you know what? I've never said this before, but I do agree with Farage that the Chancellor is trying to out-Farage him. She's trying to out...
The Home Secretary.
So sorry, the Home Secretary, sorry. Clearly, she is sinking to a new low. It's absolutely incredible that a Labour government could bring in such measures or try to. Let's hope some of us in the House of Lords and perhaps MPs can stop them.
Jim, a new low for Labour?
Well, I'm looking at the result that you were pointing to on our screen here in the US House of Representatives, and the result I'm actually looking for is when the Scotland game gets going in a few minutes' time. Look, this issue, look, legal migration to our country is undoubtedly a positive.
Even at the numbers of 1 million people or close to...
Well, I was genuinely surprised by those numbers, but in general, people come to this country, as my family did, from Ireland, and they enrich our country, they diversify our country, they contribute to our country in all sorts of different ways. But there's a social deal in our country, which is that there's a tolerance for a degree of legal migration in return for dealing with illegal migration. So what the Home Secretary is doing is talking about people in the future coming to this country. Personally, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that if you come to this country by breaking our law, that you shouldn't be allowed to stay in the country.
Oh, I'm sorry,
it's not unreasonable.
Complete rubbish. You know,
well, it's not complete rubbish, it's my opinion.
The big problem here is that Labour has not created enough safe managed routes. We've done it for Ukrainians, we've done it for a few other nationalities, people from Hong Kong, for example. If we had safe managed routes, then people would be able to come here, justify their arrival, start to work, start to pay tax, start to create businesses, and actually be a huge benefit to our society.
Do the Greens believe in any migration controls?
Oh yeah, of course we do.
Well, what is the policy?
You have to have safe managed routes, and Labour has been completely incompetent.
Jenny, what would you do with... Jenny, I'm asking you a question.
Let me finish first.
Oh, please do.
You know what? During the time I've been in the House of Lords, I've watched the Conservative government, I've watched the Labour government, and the Labour government said all sorts of things when they were in opposition. They are now saying the opposite. They're starting to sound like the Conservative Party. It's very distressing for somebody like me who understands, and it appears he does as well, that migration can be extremely healthy for our country, and yet Labour seems hell-bent on this inhumane policy.
OK, we are going to pick this up in a second, I promise, because it is a fascinating debate and one that I want to get involved in as well. But as promised, we are going to go just because we are expecting this vote now in the next minute or so, or 2 minutes, as you can see there, in Washington, D.C. in relation to the Jeffrey Epstein files. David Blevins, our US correspondent, is there for us. And David, looking at that, it seems essentially, unsurprisingly, a foregone conclusion.
Yes, just one Republican vote against, as you can see in the nay column, but very close to the end of the vote now. Just about 2 minutes left for the House of Representatives to decide what way it's going to go on this motion to suspend the normal rules and pass a bill on the release of the Epstein files in full. While we wait for that vote to conclude, let me just explain that if it is passed, and it is looking extremely likely, in fact, that nay vote has just switched as we speak, and that can happen, of course, right up until the gavel falls. People can change their minds if they voted in error or decide to change at the last minute. But if this passes the House of Representatives, it then goes to the Senate. If it passes in the Senate, it lands on the desk of the President for his signature. And this is the telling bit. If it passes both the House and Senate by a 2/3 majority, then the President loses any sense of veto. Democrats are concerned that once it goes from the House to the Senate, that there may be some amendments tabled, and they fear that the files could be delayed or the bill could be tampered with in some sense before it ever reaches the desk of the President. But this will be a significant moment. It looks like we're just about 40 seconds away from a result. We'll know the result once the gavel falls. The person in the chair has to declare that result. And really, this is the culmination of a remarkable campaign by women who survived the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein and have been urging politicians on Capitol Hill for some time now to release the files in full. They don't want them released in some kind of redacted way. They understand there are investigations going on, but they believe it's very important for as much information as possible to be in the public domain and to end years of conspiracy around this issue.
Well, there we go. As you say, that vote has ended. So we haven't quite got the gavel hitting the bench there in the House of Representatives. But David, with that result now in, it goes, as you were suggesting, to the Senate. But what I can't understand, and what many people here can't understand, and indeed it's not been explained, why the US President himself, Donald Trump, is allowing this process to happen rather than just releasing the files, which he says he's got no problem in doing so.
Yeah, that is a question being asked by many people. It was asked on the floor of the House in the moments leading up to this vote. Democrats saying there's no need for a vote in the House, no need for a vote in the Senate if the President himself chooses to put all of this information in the public domain. He is a man, Donald Trump, who has been under some pressure around this issue really for the best part of a week. It was last Wednesday, you will recall, Darren, some 23,000 documents were released by the Oversight Committee on Capitol Hill. That's the committee investigating the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. And that really fueled something of a storm around all of this, not just because of the content of those files, but because at that moment, 4 Republicans aligned themselves with Democrats to force the vote that we've been watching in the House right now. We know that there was some pressure brought to bear from the Trump administration on some of those Republicans, and we also know that's been a very public row between the President and a woman who was until very recently one of his most loyal and vocal allies, Marjorie Taylor Greene. He has taken to calling her Marjorie traitor, Green. This morning she said he was calling her a traitor for standing with these women being the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. And she claimed a traitor is an American who serves foreign countries. So a very public falling out between the two. But all of that going on within his own Republican Party, within his own MAGA base, has brought us to the point really now where the House of Representatives has held a vote that many believe should have been held some time ago on the release of the files in full. It looks, as I see the numbers clocking up, like they're still voting despite the official time having expired. The Speaker did suggest earlier that he expected this to be an unanimous vote when the time came. So let's just see when they finish and the gavel falls what the number is. It's sitting at 373 there, so that tells us already that they have gone beyond the 2/3 majority, 435 voting members in the House. So they only needed something like 290 of them to hit that 2/3 majority, and they've done that.
OK, David's live for us there in the United States. We will return to you once we've got that absolute confirmation, but it does seem that that legislation compelling the Department of Justice to release more Jeffrey Epstein documents has won enough support. I just want to briefly, in the briefest form, return to what we were talking about just a second ago, because Jenny and Jim are still with us. And Jenny, you both feel very passionate about this subject of immigration. So my question to you is essentially, why do you feel, or why is it that the argument that you make is not settling with the majority of the British public?
Well, I'm not sure that's true. I think the British public have a quite complex reaction. And when you start to create an atmosphere of fear and distrust, which is what reform has done, and then the Labour government mimics it and makes it worse, what you're doing is you're blaming all the woes of society on a group of people who are desperate for safety. And instead of looking at the people who really have caused all these problems, it's inequality that causes the problems that we're facing. You know, a shortage of money for the NHS and problems with the police and all those things. It's inequality. It's wealth going into the hands of very few people and not being spread through society.
Jim, just briefly on this.
Yeah, I think it's a lazy and out-of-touch argument to say that Labour's like reform. But I get that that's the Green Party's core argument. I'm not involved. Please do let me finish.
Sure.
But look, I'm not involved in politics anymore. My job is to just reflect what I think. I think that we have a responsibility to those people who are here legally to support, enable, educate, train and integrate in any way and every way we can. Those people who break the rules to come here, I just don't think we have a responsibility to allow them to stay. But while they're here, what we should do is ensure their safety. And I worry that there's a polarisation of the debate between the reform folk who want to kick everyone out and the Greens who want to let everyone in.
That's not true. And
well,
I did explain that earlier.
What would you do for an illegal immigrant in this country? Would you want to return illegal immigrants out of this country or not?
If we have a good system here in Britain, then we wouldn't have all the problems that we're facing at the moment.
But Jim did ask a question, what the border controls would be for the Greens that you would implement. And you said more safe routes. That's not a border control in essence of trying to bring the numbers down. That is just suggesting. So if people if you created more safe routes and people continue to cross the channel in small boats, what would you do with them?
The point is that people are coming across the channel in small boats and making huge fortunes for the people who are actually making it happen for them. They're still coming because there aren't no safe routes. If we want to stop the small boats, we make safe, managed routes. Okay. That's the only way to do it.
OK, well, it is a debate that is certainly going to continue, and we will have to see how Parliament reacts to the Home Secretary's proposals for the moment. Thank you very much indeed, because we're going to turn on to the other big issue in British politics at the moment, and that, of course, is the economy and the budget, which the Chancellor is set to deliver, of course, a week tomorrow. Well, we've sat down with Kemi Badenoch to get a clearer picture of what the Conservative Party would do with the economy. She was speaking to our Deputy Secretary, Sam Coates, and the Tory leader said that she backs the triple lock pension for the moment, but wouldn't explicitly rule out reforming it in the next Parliament.
Kemi Badenoch, at the press conference just now, you talked about the importance of stopping bankruptcy by squeezing wealth for, and that's your big message today. I just want to know where you think this has worked around the world. You've been praising the Argentinian president, Javier Milei. Is he the model?
Well, Argentina has a different economy from Britain. The principle still stands that we need to live within our means. The government needs to live within its means. It's no good telling people that it needs to take more taxes out of their pockets and then wasting it. I believe that there are a lot of people who are out of work who should be in work, and we should do everything we can to help them into work. Let's get Britain working again.
Because the key detail with him is, in order to make it fair, he's cutting welfare across the board. But you differ from him in one big way, which is you are protecting pensioner benefits. Why is he wrong and you right?
Well, because we are not growing at the same rate that Argentina is. I believe the question you're really asking is about the triple lock. One of the things that I've said is that if we were growing at 2-3%, we wouldn't have a problem with pensions. Argentina is growing at 6%. What we're seeing right now is growth at 0.1%. Growth is flatlining. We need to start with getting growth, and that means focusing on getting people into work. People working are productive. That's how we get the growth. Businesses create jobs, so let's not punish businesses. Let's help them create jobs and invest.
But I was going to ask about the big picture of the welfare bill. Look, we spend £175 billion on benefits for pensioners, but less, £141 billion on working aid benefits and children's welfare, and £75 billion on benefits to support disabled people and people with health conditions. Look, you've taken off the table 55% of that. Given your rhetoric today, is that responsible?
It is responsible, because we want people who have paid into a system to understand that their contribution is recognised. We don't want to punish people who are paying into the system while leaving those who are not paying into the system alone. That is why we want to start with work. We have to, growth is the fundamental problem. We have to get growth. Cutting pensions does not create growth. So all we're doing is slicing a shrinking pie into different pieces.
How does shrinking things like welfare for the disabled help growth?
Well, we're not trying to go after people who are disabled. We're trying to go after people who are out of work when they should be in work. When we left office in July, 2,000 people, new people a day, 2,000 new people a day were claiming health and sickness benefits. That number is now 5,000 new people each day claiming benefits for health and sickness. That has got to be tackled.
And sorry, just one more on the triple lock. Are you saying never, ever will you look at reforming it? Look, in 2010, when it was brought in by the Tory-led coalition, I think there was a recognition that pensioners got something of a raw deal, but now it costs £12 billion more than it did then. Is there no moment where you might say, we're going to look again at this policy?
That moment is not now, and I don't want people to be confused about what our policy is. Right now, our policy is to keep the triple lock. Let us focus on welfare. That is the place.
Sorry, what do we mean by right now? So how long does that last for?
Well, let's see what mess Labour leaves. Let's see what mess Labour leaves for us. But what I can't do.
So you could change this after the election.
I have said that the triple lock is Conservative policy. It has been since 2010. In 2010, we came in to fix a mess that Labour made.
But sorry, just to be clear, what that means.
I have been repeatedly clear over the times, or at the dispatch box again and again, and I will be clear now. Conservative policy is to keep the triple lock
for the whole of the next Parliament.
Conservative policy is to keep the triple lock.
Well, let's get more on this with the very Sam Coates, who is with me in the studio. And Sam, an interesting answer there from Kemi Badenoch. The triple lock potentially in question, or its removal, I should say?
I mean, great question. I have to say that the manner in which she answered that question surprised me. As you just heard very clearly, and I saw you notice this, when asked, can you promise to commit to the triple lock all the way through the next Parliament, there wasn't a clean answer. She said, let's wait and see what kind of mess Labour leave for us. So there was just a little bit of wiggle room there. There are other Conservative voices who are urging the Tories to look again at the triple lock. So let's just see if this is the beginning of something. Interestingly, there is pressure now to the right of Kemi Badenoch to do something. Listen to this from Nigel Farage today.
What about the triple lock on pensions?
Open debate. Depends on the state of the economy.
When will you decide?
Not now, nearer the election.
Lots of pensioners will be quite worried about that.
I'm sure they would be. But right now, they're getting above inflation increases. Now, that doesn't mean they're wealthy. The real worry for many pensioners will be, even with modest pensions, this budget could drag them all into the tax system. That'll worry them even more.
Well, fascinating, all of that, of course. We've just had the gavel bang in Washington, D.C., which I think we'll be able to play to you. Of course, that's the confirmation of that vote. Let's have listening to what's coming out of the House of Representatives.
On this vote, the yeas are 427, the nays are 1. 2/3 being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Well, there we go. That is official confirmation. A bit of to and fro in earlier on, but we do now have, as I say, confirmation. The US House has passed that bill to release those Epstein files. It will now go to the US Senate. David Blevins is with us from Washington. And David, cheers from the public gallery, it seems there, and claps, I would suggest, largely from Democrats members.
Yes, that's right. And in the public gallery at the House of Representatives this evening are survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. 435 voting members there are. 427 of them have voted to suspend the rules, to rush through this bill, to release the Epstein files. That really is extraordinary. I counted just one Republican vote against. There were a handful of other members who didn't vote at all, but it does now move this to the next stage. The 2/3 majority is pretty overwhelming as it makes its way, this bill, now to the Senate. Democrats are concerned that the Senate, which has a Republican majority of just 3, could seek to tamper with the bill in some way, to add some amendments to it, which could result in it having to go back to the House of Representatives. But it becomes increasingly difficult for them to do that when you're looking at 427 members of the House of Representatives having weighed in behind it. And if the Senate approves it also by a 2/3 majority, this bill then ends up on the desk of the President of the United States. At that point, the only thing standing in the way of the release of the Epstein files in full is Donald Trump's own signature. Asked yesterday if he would be prepared to sign it, he said, "Sure, I would." But things have moved remarkably quickly since the Oversight Committee, that congressional committee on Capitol Hill, released 23,000 documents from the Epstein estate last Wednesday. That really was the moment when 4 Republicans crossed the floor, so to speak, aligned with Democrats to force this vote this evening. And really, it means the effort to bring the Epstein files out into the public has cleared the first of 3 very significant hurdles.
OK, David, live there for us in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much indeed. And, of course, we'll have continuing coverage of the consequences of that vote throughout the night here on Sky News. Let's return now, though, to the economy, the debate we were just having before we got confirmation of that vote, particularly around the triple lock. Jenny, it's fascinating that we are starting to question this, that even parties that have been pretty resolute on backing it are starting to question whether the triple lock is a sensible policy to have.
I don't know what Labour's going to do, and I'm not sure that anybody does know what Labour's going to do.
They might not even know we're number 11, to be fair.
Well, quite. We had a minister in front of us in the House of Lords today, and we were asking him questions, and he stonewalled us. He refused to give us any answers, and he just kept saying, "I refuse to speculate." Now, in fact, of course, the government's leaked so many little snippets about this budget that they have invited speculation, and that's actually probably not very healthy, because what we want is a strong government.
Just particularly on the triple lock, though, I mean, would you, for example, like to see it roll back? Do you think we can afford it?
At the moment, it seems a sensible way forward. Quite honestly, I don't know what our policy is on the triple lock, because I didn't know we were going to discuss it this evening, so I didn't check. But at the moment,
what's your personal view, though?
I suppose it seems like a sensible way forward at the moment, and God, am I going to agree with Farage again? It sort of does depend on how the economy performs.
Jim?
which is potentially not very good.
I think it is affordable if the economy outperforms some of the projections. But the government and business and their international partners have got to do more. These global tariffs are damaging. Lack of connectivity to the EU is damaging. And the investment environment has to be predictable for major investors into the UK.
Is it, we've got an ageing population, is it fair that younger people are going to have to pay more tax, probably more income tax, even if it just means moving the thresholds, to help fund pensioners?
Well, look, they
can't afford to buy a house, for example.
There is generational disadvantage in this country. It cascades down the generations and the tax system reinforces that. That's just a fact. Now, if you want to, I'm not in politics anymore, Jenny and other people are, but if you want to win an election in this country, you've got to persuade people to go and vote for your policies. That's a well-tested and the right way to go about these things. But when there's such generational disadvantage that affects the people who vote in the smallest numbers to the benefit of those people who vote to the largest numbers, I think we have to look at the tax system. But the solution to all of this is a growing economy.
Well, I mean, yes, and I think everyone would love to see a growing economy. Whether we're going to see that or not is a big challenge, of course, for the Labour Party, isn't it? And that budget is next Wednesday, but there'll be little doubt that, despite what Jenny's saying, there's probably going to be continued speculation, maybe even some more leaks as we get closer to it. It's going to feature, of course, in tomorrow's papers. And we've got our extended press preview from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us tonight is the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman and the columnist and lead writer of The Times, Sebastian Payne. OK, we're going to take a quick break here on the Politics Hub. Up next, as the Prime Minister has headed to Berlin, racking up yet more air miles, we'll be asking whether appearing on the world stage is helping him back here at home.
She's preparing the ground to raise taxes.
The budget, I've got to do the things that I think are right.
There are tax rises coming down the track.
You can't rule out further tax rises.
It's exactly what she's going to have to do.
She'll be talking about that when it comes to the budget.
We'll be talking everything money as the Chancellor reveals what's in her budget.
Goodness knows how it's going to play out if these tax rises are announced.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Omdurman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News. Right, welcome back to the Politics Hub. Now, given the difficulties facing the Prime Minister at home, you could
maybe hardly blame the Prime Minister for wanting to escape. And as it happens, he is on his way to Berlin today for the latest in a long list of foreign trips. In fact, according to the Times newspaper, by the end of the month, he'll have spent 1/6 of his premiership abroad and have completed 6 laps around the earth. Here's some of the places he's escaped to.
I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the deserts bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere. I've been everywhere.
Certainly been around the world, ticking off those countries. Is it a bad thing, though? Jim and Jenny are with me. Jim, we've been a little bit harsh here. At the end of the day, being Prime Minister also means travelling and representing the country abroad.
It does. Look, the most important thing I think he can achieve in all of these travels is trying to keep the sort of Western democratic coalition together at a time when the US's commitment to it is open to question. So I actually celebrate the fact that on many of these trips, it's been about keeping that European cohesion while being a Trump whisperer. Well, because ultimately, all the things we've been talking about this evening, public services, the triple lock and everything else, if Trump reneges on Article 5 of NATO commitment, which is a defence of one, an attack on one's an attack on all, the UK and others would unfortunately have to rearm at a level that makes other things unaffordable. So if Keir achieves nothing else in his travels other than keeping Trump committed to some degree to the Western Alliance, then every one of these air miles is a great investment.
Jenny, what about you? Because it's not just him, it's been accused of politicians in the past, I know, when things are tough at home, it's important to look kind of good on the world stage. Do you think that's what's happening here, or do you think...
I think that's probably what he thinks is happening, but in fact what we need here now is strong, stable leadership, and we're not getting that from the Labour Party, and we're definitely not getting it from the Prime Minister. I met him a few times before he was elected as an MP, and he came across as an honourable, principled person. He didn't come across as a leader, and I think that's what's happening here. He doesn't understand how to lead, and hence all the problems at Number 10 and all the leaks and all the changes of mood and changes of mind.
Just in the space of 15 seconds, is he more comfortable on the world stage than he is in the tea rooms of the Commons? That's been an accusation accused.
Well, I've not been in the tea rooms of the Commons with him, but I do know that in the work that he's doing internationally, if he wasn't doing it, we'd be having a conversation saying, why isn't Keir Starmer whispering to Trump?
OK, Jim Murphy, Jenny, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on the Politics Hub this evening. Thank you. Well, that is it from us for tonight. I'm going on holiday myself for a couple of days. Matt Bobette will be with you from 7 tomorrow. Up next, it is the UK Tonight with Sarah J. Mee, including more on that China spying scandal. Stay tuned for that, and I'll see you on Monday. Good evening.